Very few establishments welcomed openly gay people in the 50s and 60s. Those that did were often bars. The Stonewall Inn at the time was owned by the mafia. It catered to an assortment of patrons, but it was known to be popular with the poorest and most marginalized people in the gay community. Drag queens, representatives of a newly self-aware transgender community, effeminate young men, male prostitutes, and homeless youth. At 1:20 in the morning on Saturday, June 28, 1969, 4 plainclothes policemen in dark suits, 2 patrol officers in uniform, a detective, and a deputy inspector arrived at the Stonewall Inn's double doors and announced, "Police, we're taking the place." The raid did not go as planned. Standard procedure was to line up the patrons, check their identification, and have female police officers take customers dressed as women to their bathroom to verify their sex, upon which any men dressed as women would be arrested. So if you dress wrong, or if you love wrong, you're going to jail. That was overcome. Such a thing is not happening anymore. And we celebrated that when this week 3 cars with people from our congregation went up to Salt Lake to the Pride Interfaith service, and we witnessed people from all walks of life and all faith traditions coming together in a spirit of love and pride, that those things cannot happen anymore. And the statement that the Utah Pride Interfaith Coalition has for itself speaks loudly to that. Together we celebrate the divine within each of us. It is tragically believed by some gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people that on the event of their coming out, they lose all rights to consider themselves people of faith, spiritual, and capable of holiness. As an interfaith community, we come together from many diverse faiths and cultures to proclaim loudly and proudly that such is not the case. Each of us is a being of love, created as we are. Eventually, things in New York after that raid turned nasty. That was a community of the marginalized that had to fight for themselves, because nobody fought there for them. Nobody was there to support their cause. Nobody was there to help them, so they went amok. And that is not unprecedented in history. People and communities have always had to speak up for themselves, because most of the time there's no one there to help you. There's no one there to take on your cause. There's no one there to speak for you. This week, on the 30th of May, in the year 1431, Joan of Arc was martyred on the stake. She was burned as a heretic because the Pope didn't like how she wanted the people of France and the Kingdom of France to survive. France has been fighting with England for 100 years, the 100 Years' War in the 13 and 1400s. And around came that woman who rallied the troops, preached to them, boosted their morale to eventually bring the victory to the French. And she got killed for that because she spoke up for her people that needed someone to speak up for them. She was one of them. The French needed to speak up for themselves. And the result was the deadly one that those people always get. She was arrested and burned to death. And she stood there pretty much like people in those situations can only do. She's quoted saying, "I'm not afraid, I was born to do this." She thought the people of France have a right to live as their people in their place. And they needed to advocate for themselves. We heard one story from of old that worked pretty much the same way, and that is the centurion in Capernaum. There was no one there who could help his slave. So the Capernaum centurion took it on himself to make his case. My slave is dying. Jesus, help me. My slave is dying. He had to do that for himself. There was no one to come in and help these two. Now, let's not think that that would be an actual story. But really what it is in the Gospel of Luke, and that means it's probably from the year 90 or so. And here you got Luke and his congregation sitting in Rome with a congregation of Gentiles that aren't part of God's people. And Luke tells his congregation a story. Jesus did that. Jesus opened himself to one of us, one like ours, a Roman soldier of all people, one of the occupiers, one of the bad guys, one who is against God's people. But since that centurion had to open up to Jesus, Jesus opened up to him. Jesus actually didn't like doing that. He never opened up to the Gentiles, really. But that centurion pleading for himself is a story that gives Luke's congregation that feeling of, yes, we are something. Think of it as a handful of Christians in an evil environment that is after them. They're killing them regularly, and everybody hates them. All the people around them, pretty much like little Stonewall, right? So you got this safe haven for Christians in the middle of Rome, in a Gentile environment, and they need to speak up for themselves. And they do that by telling that wonderful story of Jesus and the centurion coming together, creating a place of acceptance. Another theme comes with that. It's not only acceptance, but it's also authority. Out of the two stories that we've heard, we got the centurion, and we also got Naaman, who was a big officer himself. Both these men have to let go of their status. They need to let go of their rank. They need to let go of that spirit of, I'm in command, I tell people what to do. They need to start begging and become small and weak. That's how healing usually works. When you're admitted to the hospital, when you're about to undergo surgery, what do you have to do? You have to sign release form after release form after release form. You sign your life away many times a day. In order to become healed, you need to become weak. You need to sign your life over to someone to heal you. You need to become vulnerable. You need to allow them to cut into your body. That's how healing works. Becoming weak. And by that, boundaries are broken down. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter who you are. You could even be a Roman or a Christian in Rome. The big miracle is not the healing. The big miracle is how these men are able to get rid of their stuff and their status. How those powerful big men manage to become like a transgendered homeless youth. That proud centurion in a weak spot, stripping himself of his rank. And Naaman had to do a tough thing. He had to open himself up to that strange alien reality in that weird land over there with that God he's never heard of, still ask for help. They needed to empty themselves of pride and in the process also their pain. They had to lose their means of how to protect themselves. We need to keep our walls up in order to keep our privacy, keep ourselves sane, not have people come too close to us so we don't get hurt, right? In order to get healed, you need to let those barriers down in certain moments. In the back of the sanctuary, there are 3 boards, and they have names on them. Those who were members of the church that died, their barriers are broken down. And in front of that is a little board that has a bunch of stones on it. Later on, I will ask you to grab one of those and look at them as the strength that you have that is in your way. Stone can be used to protect yourself and slam it over someone's head, or it could be a burden that you have to carry. Anyway, it is something that keeps you from opening yourself up towards healing. Something that represents your self-protection, either in your pain or in your strength. That's what those stones can mean today. And from the very back, I will soon ask you to come to the very front. And that's a long walk all the way down the center aisle, where you can feel and think how that stone affects your life and your sense of security for yourself. Once you make it to the altar, I ask you to place it on there, and then you will receive healing. No, not that kind of healing. But you will receive a touch, not a miracle. Your pain doesn't go away, your skin doesn't get any better. But you will receive a human touch because you opened yourself up and you basically signed that waiver. It's okay to touch me. Just a little touch on the forehead is all it is. And you will hear a word, the same word that Jesus said, that Elijah said to Naaman. You will hear that word. And that word is louder than any action could be. This is the spirit healing, not the creator. It's not like things are restored physically, but a touch and a word that puts you in the right spot. The words you will hear over the water are, your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean. Amen. Now please go. Go to where our deceased are listed. Pick up a pebble from there. Pick the one that suits your pain or your strength. A big one, a small one, a round one, a sharp one. Come to the front. Get rid of it and get healed. Lose your strength. Please pray with me. Holy One, please help me stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Be they oppressed for their sexual orientation or gender identity, be they oppressed in their countries of origin, be they victims of war or violence of all kinds, be they strangers from a different country, from a different faith, be they stuck in their sense of power and authority, or be they so weak they don't know what the morning is going to bring. Help me stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. As I open myself to be as weak so I can ask for healing. Amen.